Hey everyone, welcome to this session of DEMOFEST. For this session, we're doing acting tips for connecting on camera with Julie Hansen. She's the founder of Performance Sales and Training. Today, DEMOFEST is hosted by Consensus. We help pre-sales teams to scale with intelligent demo automation. Couple of notes, we are recording this session and we'll be posting the links to recordings in about 2 weeks. We've created a LinkedIn group called Scaling Pre-Sales and Sales Engineering. I will post the link to join that LinkedIn group in the chat during the presentation. Go in there and you'll be able to access this presentation when those are available. One other note, that during this presentation, you'll see a Q&A section there at the bottom. Feel free to put your questions in there that you would like Julie to answer, and we'll have a brief Q&A towards the end of the session. And then let's give a little background on Julie here. Julie Hansen is the author of Sales Presentations for Dummies and Act Like a Sales Pro. Julie brings the performance mindset to technical demonstrations and presentations through her company, Performance Sales and Training. Julie worked as a professional actor, appearing in over 50 plays, commercials, films, and television shows. Julie is also a certified great demo affiliate and has trained thousands of pre-sales professionals around the world over the past decade. Let's give a little digital clap for Julie, and I'll take it away, pass it to you.
All right, welcome. Happy to bring it home for DEMOFEST today. It's been quite a day. I hope you enjoyed all the sessions, and thanks for hanging in here with me at the end here. So as Miles mentioned, I worked in sales all my life, and I also worked as an actor, and that's where I really learned some techniques to connect with people on camera, which I'm going to share with you today, the ones that I've adjusted for, of course, a sales environment, because it is a much different world that we live in when we go virtual, and many of us are new to the challenge or have never really addressed that in a way that we feel confident and comfortable with. As those of you who saw Kevin O'Brien speak this morning, he talked about how we have to adjust our content for a virtual demo, a virtual meeting, as opposed to a live event. And just as you would adjust writing for a book, you'd write differently for a screenplay. And the same thing goes for how we show up in our performance. And so we're going to look at some of those techniques that you can apply quickly to really raise the bar in your game on camera. Okay, so what I'd like to do is start by getting a sense of where you're all at in terms of your use of the camera. So Miles, I think you've got a little poll there, if you would pull that up. And just like to know, how are you using your camera currently with customers? Are you always using it? More than half the time? About less than half? Only when your customer has it on? Let me get a sense of where you're at. I guarantee this will be different than it was 3 months ago. And I can tell you that when I teach pre-sales demo skills, I almost always ask this question when we get to the section about remote demos and how we make them more engaging and interactive. And I say, how many people use their webcam? And I would be surprised if it was more than 30%. That would usually blow me away. So I'm going to guess it's a little higher. So let's see what we got. Everybody get a chance to weigh in? Okay, let's go with a couple of interesting comments here, which we're gonna cover some of those points people are bringing up. Bandwidth issues, technology, we can't, those are so variable, we're not gonna cover those, but some of the reasons why we might wanna have it on and off. So why don't you give us the results, Miles, if you would. Let's see where you guys are at. Drum roll. It's thinking, okay. It's calculating. All right, interesting. So about a third, between more than half, less than half, only when my customer has their camera on. Very interesting. It's only about 14% always have it on, and certainly there are times when we may want to have that camera off, which we'll talk about. But it's interesting. I would wonder how many of you have it on more than you did before. I would guess that number is higher. And how many of you are reluctant participants in the on-camera game? I remember seeing a lot of people that had stickers on their camera. Anybody out there have had to peel off their sticker on their camera just on the off chance that somebody says guilty, just on the off chance you might have accidentally flipped your camera on? So we've come a long way from that, because now it's kind of the name of the game. Yes, yay for stickers. No more sticker days. So let's dive in and talk about what we can do to be more effective on camera and some of the skills that we need to up our game. I put this together when I was doing a selling on camera masterclass. So I'm going to give you some of the high impact tips from that you can use right away to really make a difference. And there's a lot of good reasons to use your camera on sales calls. And first of all, people respond to faces. We're just born with that attraction to another person's face. So it's inherent. We don't even have to do anything but show our face, and it's already pretty compelling. And most of us are visual learners. So we learn so much from our customers' facial expressions. They learn so much from ours, from our eye contact, whether it's congruent with our words. And eye contact's a major component in building a relationship. It helps us build it quicker. And it also humanizes you. And I think any chance you get to humanize yourself in a business relationship is so important, and we should take it. And certainly, if that doesn't sell you, Gong did a study last year that found that webcams were used 41% more often in closed deals than in lost deals. So lots of great reasons to be on camera. I want to pose the question why you're perhaps not using it more, or what is keeping you from using it more. What's the most challenging thing for you about using video? So type into chat what makes it very challenging for you, and we'll see if we can address some of those issues from the audience. I'll share with you some of the things I hear from people all the time, which is it just feels awkward, right? It's just unnatural. It's hard to make eye contact. I can't remember what I'm saying when I'm looking at a camera. I got too many other things to manage. We've got the demo, we've got our notes, we've got discovery questions. I don't like the way I look. Don't have the right background, too many kids running around or people popping in and out. So let's see what you've got. And bandwidth, too much eye contact, not enough eye contact, audience is unfamiliar with it, have on the beginning and at the close, no poker face, camera doesn't focus on the speaker if they dial in, might do something embarrassing and not realize it. Yeah, so a lot of fears and a lot of challenges around being on camera, and some of them technology based. We can try and limit those as much as possible, but that's true with any kind of technology. I don't want to be a distraction to the content. That's a good point. We'll talk about when to perhaps not have your camera on. And makeup issues. I feel too much like Tom Brady. Is that a bad thing to feel like Tom Brady? I don't know. It doesn't sound terrible. Okay, so lots of challenges with going on camera, and ultimately speaking on camera is an unnatural act. So if you feel uncomfortable, you're in good company. There's no reason you wouldn't be. Yes, some people maybe get very comfortable quickly, and like with any skill, but most of us, it's not natural, and so we let that keep us from really connecting with our customers if we don't overcome that in some way. So it's really important to understand that it's not natural, but there are some things that you can learn, some techniques and skills to make it feel more natural and feel more comfortable both for you and your customer. Just like any sales skill that you've learned, it is a skill. And it's important now not just to turn your camera on, just to make that effort. It's important to do it well, because you may have heard about something called Zoom Gloom, which is an unfortunate name for a platform that I really like and that we're on, but it is catchy, you have to give it that. But it applies to any platform. It's this overwhelming exhaustion with the experience of being on camera and just trying to connect with people and not quite doing it, and our brains working overtime to process the gaps between people's words and body language that we can't see and awkward silences. And it's just a challenge today. And our customers are being bombarded with video calls. And so you think you're tired of them. They have one after the other, and all their vendors want to have a video call, and they just have this overwhelming sense of sameness to them. Just a parade of, bad eye contact, bad lighting, awkward pauses. So if we can not just show up, if we can really, raise ourselves up and show up and really connect with people on camera, it's such a great way to solidify that relationship with a customer and really stand out. And what happens is, it's just not enough to be on camera today. When we don't adapt to this environment, when we feel awkward or self-conscious on camera and we're thinking that's not being communicated, or when we lack that understanding of what the techniques are and what we are perhaps doing that's distracting our audience, then our customer just simply feels disconnected. They have less confidence in you and your solution. They may not know why, but on a subconscious level, it's like, I don't know, something just felt a little off, and it's because you felt a little off. We pick up on those things, and they feel doubtful and uncertain. And today is a time like never before where we need to really communicate certainty and confidence and credibility. And ultimately, they tune out. So what we're going to talk about is a number of skills that will help you start to operate in this environment in a way that makes your customer feel connected to you. We're going to talk about being natural on camera, what that is, what it isn't, eye contact, which is always perplexing to people, what your stage is and your body language and how to work within that, and then some things you can do both before you get on camera and after you've been on camera to improve your performance. So like I said, it's a technique. And like many of the actors here who started out in stage in front of a live audience, had to adjust to this being on video, being on film, it's a transition that we're going through today. And I went through it myself. So I started out as a stage actor, and I did that for a couple of years, and I got a chance to audition for a small role in a film. And I went to the audition, I was feeling pretty confident, and I got in there and they shut the door and stood me in front of the camera and they turned it on, and I just froze. I was like a deer in headlights. I just got locked into the stare. I couldn't seem to break. I didn't know if it was okay to look away. I couldn't remember my lines. It was awful. Needless to say, I did not get the part. However, I did take an on-camera acting class, which taught me that there are techniques to being on camera to still allow yourself to be authentic, but you do have to adjust to this environment. And they're very adaptable to our environment today in business. So one of those techniques is something that we don't realize when we get on camera, that a lot of times I hear people say, well, just act natural. Like, don't be nervous, just be yourself, just act natural, which is good in intention. However, what do you think of when people say just act natural, just be yourself? Right? Most of us think of being comfortable, right? Being comfortable, being kind of laid back. And that just doesn't read well on camera. Now, hopefully you're not as laid back as this guy, but there's a part of us that just, we want to combat those nerves by being very relaxed and very natural. And here's what happens. So I'm going to go full screen here so you can really get the impact of this. So let's say we're having a sales conversation, and I want to be comfortable and natural with Bob here. So I'm going to get comfortable and got him on the call and say, Hey, Bob, thanks for joining me. So what we're going to talk about today is a tool that's going to give you greater visibility into your sales pipeline and allow you to really identify those problems and opportunities so that you can be proactive as opposed to reactive. So what did you notice? Perfect, right? Not so much. Tense, low energy. Somebody just said no. Just no, Julie, whatever it was. Don't do that again. Low energy, unenthusiastic, right? But I was comfortable, right? I was being myself. That's me when I'm natural. I hate to break it to you, but when I'm comfortable. So this is what happens. We get in our heads that we want to be natural. We don't want to be nervous, and we get comfortable. And we often lean back, which makes our energy go down. And the fact that we're sitting anyway will bring our energy down. And that lowers my voice, my vocal energy, and I don't have much expression or inflection or enthusiasm. And what it reads to you as, wow, she's really not that into this. And that is certainly not the impression that I want to give off, and I'm guessing you don't either. So what reads well to a customer? What is natural on camera? Well, it's actually you at your most engaged and loosely focused or loosely energized state. It's as if you are in the middle of a conversation that you're really passionate about. That's the type of energy that you want to bring. Not that you sitting back channel surfing, right? Nobody wants to see that. So there's a couple of pieces to this that help you get there. And the first is position. You have to think about what reads well to your audience, because while you're comfortable, we want to make sure it's more important how your audience feels than how you feel. That's the bad news about being a performer or being in sales, right? So the ideal position that reads as engaged and interested is sitting straight up, leaning slightly forward, maybe 10-15%, as if you're on the edge of your seat and you can't wait to hear what the other person has to say. So everybody at home, I want you to try it right now. Sit up straight, because I know some of you are slouching, and lean forward ever so slightly, as if you can't wait to hear what I have to say. How does that feel? Comfy? No, it doesn't feel comfortable, because you know why? You don't sit like that most of the time. So you have to practice, because this needs to be your go-to on-camera position, and you have to get comfortable with that. And you need to really offset that tendency to lean back and settle down, right? So practice it when you're watching a webinar, when you're on a team call. Like any technique, you want to practice it off camera. You want to practice it in low stakes environment, not on your customer. So position is important. Secondly, you got to bring energy. Sales is at its very basic a transfer of energy. And there was not much energy happening with me there laid back in my chair. So we want to bring energy, which means we have to get our energy up before we get on a call, because just the act of being seated will deplete that energy. If you've ever been backstage before a performance, you'll typically see the actors, moving around, they're jumping in place, they're trying to keep that energy flowing, because nerves will tighten things up and they'll make you feel tense, and then you'll start to feel really awkward, and you'll also get very low in energy as well. So you have to bring that energy to start. So I would say warm up in the morning, and then do those energy builders in between calls, just to keep that energy high, because you don't want to contribute to somebody's Zoom gloom with your own Zoom gloom. And then finally, you have to think about, how do you feel about your camera? Because the camera picks up not just what it sees, but it also picks up how you feel about it. You probably heard people say, oh boy, the camera really loves her, or it just loves him. And that's probably not quite accurate. It's really more that they love the camera, because the camera absolutely picks up that feeling, because it's expressed in your face and your eyes and your body language. So if you feel like, why do I have to be on camera? And I hate this and I can't wait till this is over. You may be saying all the right words, but your face is saying something else, and your customer is going to pick that up. So while you may not have to love your camera, you do need to make friends with it. And a couple of ways to do this really, really easily is to just spend some time talking to it every day. Like any relationship, you gotta invest some time in it. So just spend a couple minutes a day, turn on your camera and just say, hey, camera, here's what's going on today. Just get over that barrier of it being the enemy, because it is the lens through which your customer is going to experience you. Imagine you're talking to a good friend. I would say, imagine you're talking to somebody who's excited to hear what you have to say. It does you no good to think about your audience potentially being resistant to what you're saying, because your imagination is going to help you bring the right energy to that if you have that positive energy. And always focus on talking to one person. You can't talk to more than one person at a time on camera. So even if there are multiple people on a call, you have to think about talking to one person, because otherwise it reads very scattered. And we'll talk about eye contact in a moment. So you got to make friends with that camera. You got to be energized, and you have to be in the right position. So let's talk about eye contact. Eye contact, again, something that really is mysterious to people when it comes to being on camera. And why is it important? Well, first of all, as we said, it's very important in building relationships. In fact, it makes it much easier and faster to build a relationship with good eye contact. So how's my eye contact and this guy's eye contact? Not very good, is it? What are we doing? Right, we're looking at your image on the screen. And this is where people get trapped. Unfortunately, our camera doesn't line up exactly with other people's image. And so we have this challenge of trying to look at the other person and trying to look at the camera, and when do we do that? And then there's a lot of this going on. Not a real connection builder. So the problem is that we have this draw to look at this other person's picture. And I may feel, and this guy may feel like he is really making eye contact with you and he's listening and he's engaged, but your experience is, wow, you know, is he checking his email, or is he even listening? Why did I take this call, right? So even though intellectually we know by now that people are probably looking at the screen, it doesn't matter intellectually. On a sheerly experiential basis, it feels like you're not being attentive. So we need to combat this very powerful draw of seeing someone else's image on the screen with an equally powerful technique. And as an actor, there's this technique for making eye contact, because most of the actors you see on film, when they are talking to another actor and they are so engaged and just really relating to another person, they likely just have a camera right in front of their face. That other actor may not even be on the set that day. And yet we feel as an audience so connected to this person. So what they are doing is they are imagining that person in their mind's eye, and they're projecting that person on the camera. And then they are imagining their responses, because we are always feeding off someone's energy, which is what makes it difficult in a virtual call, because we don't often have that two-way street. But you can imagine the other person's response and feed off that and react to that. And that makes you really come to life. So applying that in a sales call would be to quickly get the person's face in your mind's eye. We want to establish good eye contact with a camera as quickly as possible, because that's part of our first impression. That's where people start to really connect with you. So you get that, you look at the person's picture, quickly project it into the camera, and start to imagine their reaction, that they're smiling back at you, or they're interested. Again, always imagine a friendly audience. It does you no good to imagine that they're disinterested. So imagine the reactions. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to just not look at them this whole time, but I want you to note what you can see with your peripheral vision. Most of us have better peripheral vision than we realize. So I want you right now to look at your camera, wherever that is, and just notice if you can see me. I'm not sure where my image is. It's probably up in the corner. And notice, you can probably see if I make a major move. And certainly, if I didn't have my screen share on, you would see if I did something very different with my face or looked like shocked. So test your peripheral vision out so we can certainly see those bigger reactions. And you do want to check in, of course, every 20, 30 seconds to make sure there isn't something that you should note from their body language, that you are in sync and on track. But what you don't want to do is this, because then you just start looking like you're very distracted and it's unsettling. So this is a technique. It takes practice. It's not easy, but it makes such a difference to the other person. And again, you can still see your customer, you still check in with them, but relationship experts tell us we should strive for making eye contact about 2/3 of the time. So that's a significant amount of the time that you want to spend in the camera. But it also means you do have time to look off stage, as it were, which we'll talk about in a moment. So let me ask you this. Who is the one person we should not make eye contact with? Any thoughts, ideas? We can't all have the same one person in our life, can we? There we go. Ourselves, yourself, your boss, your child. Those are actually good too. But as you said, yourself, you are right. Don't make eye contact with yourself. And I see this happening all the time. And it's so distracting, not so much to your audience, but to you. You're doing yourself a disservice, because this is what I see. We're having a nice conversation, and suddenly I think I better check in. Oh God, what is that hair doing? Fix that, go back. And I think I better check and see if that hair is still, oh no, why did I forgot to wear earrings? Oh. And we're just in and out, right? And I am just disconnected. I am not focused or 100% there for my customer. So you're doing yourself a disservice. And it actually is, it's very detrimental to the conversation. And we're just not used to seeing ourselves in real time on a video call this much. And so there's nothing good we usually have to say to ourselves, like, oh, look at me, I'm doing good, right? It's not usually that talk track. So what I recommend is that you hide your image. Don't turn off your video, but hide your image. And you can do this on Zoom by just right-clicking on your video and select hide your image. Because what you want to do is you want to do your work off camera. You want to get comfortable with the techniques and how you operate off camera or on low stakes calls, so that you're not practicing literally on your customer and refining your technique in the moment as you're trying to have a customer call. Nothing will take you out of the moment faster. So what about if you have a script or a demo that some people tell me their biggest challenge with being on camera is you have other things to do, right? You have to check your notes, you have discovery questions, you don't have everything memorized, you have a demo to show. So a couple things to think about. Like I said, if we can try and make our eye contact 2/3 of the time with the camera, there's still a fair amount of time that we can look away. And we want to strive for natural eye contact. We don't just stare at somebody for 20 minutes at a time. That's very unnatural, and it can be very off-putting to the other person. So it is very natural to look away, to gather your thoughts, just come right back to the camera. It's also natural to check a note or get the question in mind and then bring it back to the camera. So the technique for doing that in a way that keeps your audience engaged and doesn't make them wonder what you're doing is, first of all, you can just tell them, you can say, hey, you know what? That's a great question. Let me just check my notes. Yes, so video is often used in deals that are won 41% more often than in deals that are not won. So if I tell my audience that that seems very natural, right? What you don't want to do is this. Okay, that's a great question. Let me check. Yes, so video is used 41% more often in won deals than lost deals. You want to try and get that note or get that question and deliver it back to your audience. That's basically how actors learn a script, is they try and get it in their head and then deliver it to the other actor or to the camera. So it's the same idea with questions and notes. And if you have to check things, you know, people are pretty forgiving today. So as long as it's something that you can quickly access and you know, get a note stand that you can keep handy so it's in line with your site and you can quickly access, and then just make sure that you keep going back to the camera. Okay, so the other thing we want to think about is, what about with a demo, and you know, where do we really want to have our camera on and perhaps off? So we want to have it on for sure initially when we're connecting with people, in those introductions, when we're meeting people, when we're doing our opening, Q&A, summary, those things where it's the focus is between you and the customer. And as some people have mentioned, sometimes that you want to have it off is when you're in your demo. Certainly, you don't want to make your customer have to choose between looking at you or looking at your demo. And if you give them a choice, you're leaving it in their hands. You should make that choice for them. If you want them to watch your demo, show your demo. If you want them to look at that rather complex report, just have the report up there. But be sure and go back to your camera during those moments when you can make a strong connection. I would say, as a presenter, your job is to manage your audience's eyes. So you have to know at all times, what do you want them to look at? And make sure that you make it very crystal clear, because if you don't know, you're leaving it up to them. All right, so let's talk about your stage, what your stage is, and body language, what that means. Often people say, well, what kind of body language is on camera? Because there's so little of your body showing, but it actually contributes quite a bit. First of all, let's talk about your stage. Your stage is really your first impression. It's whatever your audience sees. And that's really critical to get right, because we make very profound decisions during those first few seconds when we see someone. So you want to get your stage right. And it's everything from how close you are to the camera, how you're framed, to lighting, to background, to what you're wearing. So think about what you want to communicate to your customer. What is your brand, and does your stage support that? I know there's a lot of questions now that we're at home and we don't have the luxury of a very sedate business setting sometimes. And again, I think people are more forgiving on that. So strive for neat, uncluttered, professional, simple, and something that will support you, because you are the star, you're the performer, your stage is your background. As far as body language goes, I think the tenet that sums it up best is less is more. And I love this quote from Michael Caine. Theater acting is an operation with a scalpel. Movie acting is an operation with a laser. Meaning it's just much more precise and measured and thoughtful, because big, fast movements just don't read well on camera. It feels chaotic because we are in a much closer environment. We are in what's usually a medium close-up shot. And that's pretty intimate. In fact, it's closer than we would sit if we were in person. So we have to take that into account. So what you want to think about is keeping those movements within your frame, and which means you have to be comfortable with what your frame is, right? Do a little YMCA here. So know what your frame is, And just try and, if you're going to gesture, that's fine. I like to have, be able to show my hands to gesture, and gesture within frame. Don't do a lot off frame because we'll wonder what you're doing, right? Make slow, deliberate movements, again, as opposed to those fast things, especially if you're using a green screen, because that can do all kinds of funny things when you're moving too quickly. You can start to look like a sci-fi character. And you can even do less with your voice. You can think about drawing people in. You want to make sure they can hear you, of course, but think about drawing them in. And one thing you want to remember about body language is that objects may appear larger than they are. What I mean by this is, what do you notice about my hands when I put them up here? And don't say she needs a manicure. They are giant. Thank you. Yes, they're giant. They're giant. They're bigger than my head. Right, but they're not, I promise. They're normal. See, giant, normal. So just be aware that anything you place closer to the camera will be disproportionately large. And where you want to really think about that is when you have this impulse to get closer to the camera. And it can start to feel very aggressive. There's a natural tendency when we get excited or we want to connect with someone to lean forward. And it's much less obvious when we're in person because there's more context and there's more room, but it's very, very personal when you're in this tightest space. So be aware of the distance between you and the camera. And if you want to connect with someone, put that energy into your voice and your expression and your words, not in this movement to go forward. Okay. So let's talk about quickly some things you can do before and after you get on camera to make sure you show up at your best. So before you get on camera, walk your stage. Like any good performer, you want to check your props. The lighting is going to be different depending on the time of the day. Since you're at home, people may have placed something inadvertently on your stage. So you want to be sure that you take control of that. Of course, check your technology, test your equipment. I'm preaching to the choir here, I know. Do those warm-ups so you're in a great state energy-wise and you're not working your kinks out on that first poor customer. And do all your techniques, all your exercises so that you can focus 100% on your audience when you're on that call. Now, after you're on camera, what I'd like you to do is think about recording yourself if you don't already. Recording some of your sessions. Don't necessarily do anything different initially, just kind of get a read of where you're at. And then try and review it objectively, which I know is so difficult. But really just look at it from the standpoint of, first of all, what did you do well? Did you make good eye contact? Did it look like you were really engaged? Were you look like you were sitting on the edge of your seat? Were you moving in frame? What went well? And then notice where you can improve. All right, what are the things that you can improve on? There may be a couple of things that, there may be a list of things, but just pick one or two to work on, right? And master those before you move on to the next. And again, do your practicing off camera, so we're not practicing on our audience. So all those things will help you really start to internalize these techniques, because my objective is for you to feel comfortable and natural and internalize these techniques so that when you're on camera with a customer, you're not thinking about, I have to move here, I have to make this much eye contact. It just becomes part of your repertoire, but that doesn't happen on its own. So that's why I launched this Selling on Camera Masterclass, which you're welcome to check out. We're going to take some questions now, but just a little bit about that. It's a set of 10 videos which go through in more detail a lot of these techniques and many more to help you really engage with your customers and make the most of those face-to-face moments in this new environment. So let's take some questions here. So what questions do we have? Speaking of backgrounds, check out the Twitter account to learn more about good backgrounds. Okay, good tip. A lot of people ask about backgrounds. There's some fun ones out there, I know. And my advice is you don't want to compete with your background. And that means, yes, some of them are very fun and vibrant and compelling, but you're the star of the show, right? So again, it should support you. And you also have to think about, is this the image I want to portray? What else? What other questions do we have, Miles?
Hey, Julie, so I often run into this myself when I've got the camera on, but the customer doesn't. Should
Mhm.
I encourage them to turn it on, or how do I approach that situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I just want to say it's more important that you have your camera on. We can't always control, well, we can't rarely control what a customer does. It's more important that they experience connecting with you than you connecting with them. It's certainly valuable if they do, but it's not imperative, and it shouldn't prohibit you from turning your camera on. A lot of times people today, I think they're more receptive to that, like, uh, saying very offhandedly say, hey, I don't see your camera on. Do you, love to see your face? Just a casual reference. And if people are really resistant to it, they're not going to. But sometimes they're just, they just didn't realize, or they're tired of being on camera. And we just need to adjust ourselves to fit that and not worry about what they're doing.
Awesome. We did have a question from Patrick came in. It says, where do you place a webcam? Most of them either in an awkward upward angle or on top of a large monitor. Makes it hard to make eye contact.
Yes, the camera is rarely where it's perfect for your sight line. So you need to think about, setting it somewhere, and that's why I use an external webcam, and somewhere where it can be eye level or just above, because we don't want these horrible, up shots or down shots, which aren't the most flattering. So it's just going to depend on your setup. So you want to play around with that. And again, it's more than likely that wherever you put it, it's still not going to line up with other people's pictures. And so you have to find a happy medium that shows you at your best and also allows you to see as much of the other person's picture as possible, or at least in your peripheral vision.
Okay.
What else?
We've had a few questions come in regards to, at the beginning of a call, they'll turn their camera on to have that initial conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the demo starts, the question is, should you turn it off, or how would you handle that?
Yeah, so when you get into the demo, when you get in the software, I would turn it off to, again, make sure you've got their attention focused where you want it to be. Just remember to turn it back on, especially if you get into a longer, Q&A session, or when you're summarizing. That's a good place to turn the camera back on and really talk to them about what we just showed you was, how we can increase your visibility and et cetera. So it's a great place to have that one-on-one connection, just like you would talk to a person live. That's where you want to connect with your customer.
Okay. Here's one. What's the best way to dress? Would you dress like you were going to an on-site, or maybe a company logo shirt? What do you think?
Well, I would dress, first of all, what's appropriate for your audience, which typically, when you think about what I would wear if I were in person, is the answer to that. You can wear a logo shirt if that's something you want to really reinforce, but I think just showing up in good professional attire, thinking about what works good on camera, and typically you want to wear something that is bright. Jewel tones tend to look very well on people. Make sure you don't blend in with your background. Stay away from stripes and crazy patterns that can sometimes do funny things on camera.
Okay. Okay, here's a good one. Are there any regional or cultural differences that you run into when you're giving demos, and how would you prepare for that?
Oh, good question. Yeah, absolutely. And just, the same techniques that we use when we adjust to any culture for a live presentation, we need to think about when we're on camera with our gestures. Gestures mean different things in different cultures. So the pointing and the way we count can be different. And so you want to make sure you're aware of what those differences are. Eye contact. Eye contact is a whole big subject. We're striving for natural eye contact, like a softer gaze, as opposed to a lot of people get stuck like that deer in the headlight looking at a camera. And that can be especially off-putting in certain cultures. So yes, you have to think about what your audience is used to and get familiar with those customs.
Do you have any tips if you're doing a presentation, maybe you're working with a partner? Any tips from that point of view?
Yes, so that can be tricky on the coordination part. So you need to certainly have ways to signal each other, who's doing what, when you're going on camera, kind of put together a roadmap that includes those virtual elements. Like I'm gonna, let's be on camera at this point, or you just be on camera at this point, or we'll just have the demo at this particular just juncture. So including those virtual changes that you want to make as in addition to the content. And it's always great to have one person really paying attention to the chat or the questions, especially if you have a larger group, so that somebody can really be in the moment with the content and somebody else can redirect if there's questions that are coming up.
Okay. We'll just take a couple more here. Mike, he's asking, do you have any recommended activities to build energy before a demo?
I do. And I actually have a 7-minute warm-up on my website, performancesalesandtraining.com, which you're welcome to download. There's exercises to relieve tension, which a lot of times we want to do before we start to build that energy. And that can really keep us from communicating freely. So getting rid of that tension with stretches and tension releasers. And then whatever works for you in terms of jumping in place, jumping jacks, turn on some music and dancing, but getting that energy up. You don't want to arrive breathless, of course, but you want to have a nice elevated energy, because by the minute you sit down, it's going to sink about 20%. So take that into account and really bring a good energy. Even if you're a high energy person, what you want to do is you want to focus that energy, because a lot of high energy that's unfocused can come across as very chaotic.
So you're saying don't chug a Red Bull right before?
Well, no.
Excellent. Well, I think we're about up for time here. If you want to watch this recording, we've created our LinkedIn group. I'll provide the link for that in the chat just one more time. Julie, if people want to follow you or connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn, Julie Hansen. You can send me an email at julie@actingforsales.com. You can go to sellingoncamera.com if you're interested more on this topic. And happy to connect with you. And if I didn't get to your questions, please reach out. I'm happy to get back to you.
Excellent. Thank you again, Julie. That was extremely informative. I'm reassessing how I do my calls now. Once again, go on to our LinkedIn group and you can access this recording or any other sessions that we've done throughout here. This will conclude today's DEMOFEST sessions, but don't forget to join us tomorrow. We have our keynote with Adam Freeman. He's the head of pre-sales of supply chain and hospitality at the Access Group. And then you will be able to access the link to that and our future sessions via the email that should have come to you. And if not, you can go to demofest2020.com and you can access the sessions from there. Anyways, thank you everyone for joining us for this first day of DEMOFEST, and look forward to catching up with you tomorrow.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.